I was saying it.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Most of you are returners, so it's great. A few new people, wonderful. So, I think today we're going to start with a little bit of a meditation, because I know we've talked about that a number of times before, and I never get to it because I talk too much. So, I can't promise anything this time in terms of how much I'm going to talk, but my goal is to answer as many questions as I can in the time that we have. And so usually we go over time, and so therefore if you need to leave, of course, when the time is up, from 1 to 3 is the goal of this gathering, so if you need to leave, that's fine. But I will stick around afterwards if questions go over time to answer what I can from my perspective. So before we do the short meditation I'm planning on, just to let you know, for the newcomers, a few newcomers here, I've got kind of what I consider a unique blend of spirituality and personal development, personal growth, and cultivation that blends a lot of different avenues from different traditions, primarily based on traditions of India, so Hinduism, Buddhism, and systems from China, Taoism, mystery schools, mystery systems of the world. I kind of blend everything in together and try to present it in a way that's really helpful for people, hopefully. To help people just kind of understand, if you're here, you already have an open sense of spirituality. You're not really locked into one way of looking at things. And you may rely upon certain traditions or certain things you've been exposed to in the past, but more than likely you're still trying to figure things out. You're trying to understand what's important for you, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And you may have some practices, some meditation practices. You may be part of the yoga systems, doing things like that from the Indian traditions. Maybe some what we call New Age practices, it's all over the place, right, these days. So my goal is kind of to help you put everything together into a framework of spirituality that's very, what I call universal, open, and helps you understand, okay, with what I'm doing, is it checking off certain things I'm talking about that the ancients have talked about forever in terms of spirituality and what it means to be on the spiritual path and what happens when you're on the spiritual path, because things are supposed to happen, is the thing. Good things are supposed to happen in your body, in your mind, with your emotions, in your life, how you live, how you manage stress. Those things are supposed to change and improve. And if they're not, well then, we need to look at and see why not, right? So, before I carry on though, I want to kind of let us get still right now. And with the open meditation we're going to do, it's kind of, you meditate how you choose to. And however you know how to meditate, please do so. If you don't know how to meditate, just be still. Just be still and be aware. And so that's kind of the basic guideline. You can focus on something. That's the general basis of any meditation. Focusing on something to the best of your ability, so that you just practice being with yourself, right? So we're going to do that for a little short time. And before we do that, I'm going to start with a little bit of chanting, okay? Something new too that we haven't done. So we're going to start with really probably the most basic universal word that you guys know and have been exposed to, especially from the Eastern tradition, and that's Om, right? And maybe when we're done, we'll go a little bit into what that really means. Many of you may have an idea of what it means, but it means a lot. There have been whole books written about it. Ancient systems have gone into it in depth. It's the foundation for a lot of ancient Indian philosophy. So the point is, the word Om holds a lot of significance, a lot of power. And Om, it's really universal. It's not really exclusive to what we think of, it's from Hinduism, it's from yoga. Well, yeah, that's where it was developed. and that's where it's become famous and where everyone uses it. But what it means is much more profound and grand than that, in which I'll, or maybe I'll talk about it right now, so that you'll be kind of excited when you do chant Om, right? So, anyone have any idea what Om means? Why do we chant it in yoga class with meditation? It's part of Buddhism, it's part of Hinduism.
Isn't it like the base frequency of like the underlying universe?
Base frequency idea? Sure, yeah.
I had read somewhere, I think, that it was like, kind of like you were saying, the frequency, but also like creation itself, like the sound of creation.
Right? Okay.
God got bored, he went home, and all that never started.
So it's connected to something mystical related to creation and God.
That sounds about accurate. Yeah, no, that's right.
But why that specific sound? Right. I mean, many spiritual systems have a sound of creation. They will refer to it. In the beginning was the Word. Right? Whatever that means. We don't really know because we've kind of lost a lot of philosophy about that. But the point is, okay, this sound, this primordial sound that's been referred to in the ancient world, okay, why this specific sound? Anyone ever look it up?
Is it related to how the sound, if you spell it A-U-M, or you kind of look at it as those syllables, the A is like the beginning and its creation, and it represents Brahma, and then the U is sustenance, and that's Vishnu, and then the M is finishing and destruction of the sound or whatever, and that's Shiva.
Yes, I mean that's more of a religious understanding from the Hindu perspective, but yes, that's how many traditional Hindus will look at the word Om, where it's broken into three sounds, specifically, like you said, A, U, and M. It's not pronounced like that though, but that's how it's described as A, U, and M, A, U, and right? So, but the distinction of three is what's important here, because in the most ancient writings of India, in the Upanishads, in the specific philosophy that's been outlined in the Vedic system, there's certain whole Upanishads dedicated to Om, okay? Literally explaining why it's important and why it's one of the first words uttered in the Rig Veda, the oldest Veda in Hinduism. You find it all over the place, in all the hymns and the prayers, in reference to God, the forms of the deity, all over the place. But so the three distinctions, A, U, and M, like you mentioned, creation, preservation, destruction, and that's kind of a very general way to understand reality. Things are created, things are sustained, and things dissolve. Okay, sure. And at one level, that's one understanding, and then you can apply a more of a religious tone to that, and that's when many Hindus do apply a religious tone to it. And that's what you mentioned. Remember, in Hinduism, God, as we know it, is kind of separated into three aspects in traditional modern-day Hinduism, right? So, the creative aspect of God is called Brahma, the sustaining, preserving aspect of God is called Vishnu, and the dissolving, transforming, destroying aspect of God is called Shiva, right? And that's a whole different discussion, but that's kind of the religious overlay of it, that most Hindus will look at it that way, right? And so utterance of Om then brings in kind of this universal aspect of divinity when you're doing it, okay? And reality as it is. So another way to look at it, which is really interesting, that there's a certain Upanishad that actually outlines this in detail, is a little more practical way of understanding it based on our daily perception of reality, okay? So there's actually 4 stages, not just 3. There's a silence at the end, okay? A, U, M, and the silence. And then you That is because then this is an example of the 4 stages of consciousness every human goes through as they're alive. So, is the waking state, the beginning, okay? U signifies the dream state, dream sleep, okay? And then symbolizes the dreamless sleep, the deep sleep that most of us are not aware of. But we know it's, for people who have kind of a brainwave understanding, it's more delta, deep theta, delta. It's kind of what we get into. When you're sleeping and you have no consciousness at all, no recollection. Okay? So, and that's kind of like this magical, mystical zone, you know, in the esoteric world, in the scientific world. It's a big mystery. Everything shuts off in this 3rd stage of okay? And the 4th stage in the Upanishads, they call it Turiya. That symbolizes, again, the, you know, what's interesting in Vedanta and Hinduism, every little thing is an example of every big thing. Kind of like, as well as kind of the, you know, as above, so below, in the esoteric, mystical tradition, they kind of talk about things in the same way, okay? The microcosm is an example of the macrocosm, right? So, the human body is an example of the universe, that type of idea. So in this regard, our stages of consciousness symbolizes reality. So the 4th stage, Turiya, is the all-encompassing stage of silence that holds all the other 3 stages that most humans cannot access. They have no experience of. Normal humans, all of us, at this time. So, but it exists. They refer to it as a distinct stage of reality. State, stage, whatever, Turiya, okay? Philosophically and theologically, it refers to the stage of the all-encompassing God, Brahman, from a more spiritual point of view, right? So, within the 4th stage are the 3 stages, the previous 3, A, U, and Om. You see? So therefore, when you're chanting Om, that's what you're holding the presence of. Your consciousness as what's manifesting through your mouth, A, U, and Om, waking, dreaming, and dreamless, sleep, and then the silence at the end, which it's almost like you're giving a nod to all that is. But yet it really can't connect to it from our states of development. Most humans can. But you're bringing it into the flow, into the fold with this chant is the idea. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's what it really symbolizes. So when we do it, the A and U get blurred together as O. Usually no one says A, you know, but you can if you want to. But practically speaking, no one really does that. And then or you'll hear in certain traditions, they'll actually pronounce it instead of om. Has anyone ever heard that? Okay, never mind that. So that's the idea of Om. Now, then you have woven in to, in various places, these ancient stages we'll talk about, yes, this is also the sound we hear when we are in the deepest stages of meditation, samadhi. These expanded states of consciousness that most mere mortals just read about. You know, sitting here, we can just read about them. But these states of consciousness that have been outlined in specific ancient traditions, primarily in the East, who they really got into it, obviously, these expanded states of consciousness where the conception of the human mind and self dissolves completely, you hear the sound.
When you say you hear the sound like of silence?
The sound of silence. Right. And again, me and you talking about it, we're like, okay, yeah, we don't know. Whatever. But the point is, they would refer to it as this primordial sound of that permeates all things, this vibration. You see? And that's where the idea whole the underlying fundamental vibratory state of reality that holds this universe, all the universes, beyond the universe, everything. It's how it's described, right? And that's kind of what you guys are talking about, this vibratory nature of reality.
So the term dissolving, can you give a little more, like, what should we be thinking that are ourselves dissolved because we're just the frequency, or is it something different than that?
All of it's imagination from our point of view. So you can think you're dissolving. It's not, it's beyond that. So using the words we're talking about, like you're saying dissolving, it's the closest we can get, right? Imagining some, like, something like a piece of sand, dumping it, like a sand mold of something you dump in water, it dissolves. It's kind of how we kind of understand things, right? It losing its shape and form, where it's imperceptible, is kind of what you're referring to, the dissolution of things, right? So we can imagine that, sure, when we're meditating. What I'm referring to is, this is beyond imagination. These stages will talk about these stages of consciousness, that they're transcending the mind, the body and the mind. You can't talk about transcending the mind unless you're there. Right? So for us to talk about transcending the mind from within the mind is only the best we can do. It's going to be imagination, is what I'm trying to say. Do you follow? So we're in the box. We can't imagine what's outside the box because we're talking about what's in the box. We can talk about what we think is outside the box from within the box, but that's imagination, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So, yeah. So, but, as the ancients would say, it's still a very helpful exercise to do that. Therefore, that's what we do. We imagine, right? We imagine God. We imagine infinity. We imagine dissolving into nothingness, right? All these things we imagine because, like I say, you kind of have to fake it till you make it. And there is truth to that with this, So, it's a powerful exercise in imagining that we can dissolve into nothingness. Are you truly dissolving into nothingness? If someone were to look at you and go, no, you're still here. Inside, you're still probably bouncing around with your own thoughts, or with whatever imagination you've constructed. You're sitting in the middle of that imagination. It's still a thought form. Right?
So, for example, a monk who does reach that silence that you talk about, or maybe silence isn't even the right word because we can't comprehend it, but noise can be going on next to him and he won't hear it because he's in that different state of silence?
Yes and no. So the best way to understand it is, right now, right, you're hearing my voice, but are you aware of the pressure of sitting on the floor? Has it been bothering you? No. Same thing. You see, from that point of view, you can be aware of all things. Because things are still here. But you also now are able to be aware of more than that. And what we're talking about are the senses, right? All of us are locked into the five senses right now. That's our reality. And what the internal brain is creating of the five sensory inputs we're getting, right? The brain is creating all this phenomenon, this electrical chemical phenomenon that's creating our reality inside and outside, the five senses, right? So what I'm referring to, what you kind of refer to, these monks, these people who can then transcend the five senses. So they're now aware of what's beyond that fourth stage, Turiya, the silence of Om. You see? Now they can be aware of that silence while they're still aware of the five senses. To us, the five senses are just everything. We can't even handle the five senses. Right? That's the point, right? We are so lost and locked into the five senses, that's our full reality from birth to death, and even after death, which we'll kind of get into today eventually, get to. But that's our whole experience. After death, in the Om philosophy, is referring to the dream state. Follow now? Now we're stretching out.
To the
This.
astral.
The astral is considered the dream state from the esoteric point of view, right? And from the esoteric point of view, the wisdom traditions speak of the astral as a plane of existence. Anyone not know what I mean when I say astral? Where we're going? So stop me, please, if we're going to a place where you're not familiar with. So the astral is a designation, a modern day designation of the state of consciousness, reality, plane of existence, whatever, however you want to think of it, that most humans refer to as dream, the dream state. Okay? You're tuned into something else when you're dreaming, obviously, right? And the dreams can take on various natures. It can be literally you're just processing stuff, but usually what that means is you're not aware of your body. You're pulling your attention and awareness away from your physical body more than waking state, and it's primarily then locked into more of a mental awareness, what we call dreams. Now, in the dream you can be more aware, sure, more lucid or not, right? You can come in and out of it. We know when we're dreaming versus not, right? So we know it's something different. Something distinctly different than right now is the thing, right? And dreams can then, now, it's talked about that you can be lucid in the dream state, or the dream state can then start to appear very real in the dream, right? All of us have had those experiences, right? Where the dream feels so real in the dream. All that's happening is our internal mind then is getting fully locked into that dream state now. You see? So, in the Buddhist and Hindu point of view, they talk about the six senses. The five senses that we know, plus the mind being the sixth. So if you read some of that literature, they'll talk about the six senses. Right? That's what they're referring to. The five senses plus the mind. They consider the mind as a sensory, which we usually don't in our understanding of things in the West, right? But in this way, when you're dreaming, you can kind of go, oh, that's why they call it a sense organ. Because in the dream state, your mind is sensing. You follow? So the idea is now, reality is what the model that the ancient world kind of put forth, that because I think, in my opinion, it made most sense, it was adopted by the vast majority of humanity for the longest time. And that is that we live in a physical world that our five senses are locked into. Okay? One frame removed is another world. And that's what's called the astral in the esoteric traditions. That's where we go usually in the dream state, right? In the dream state, most humans are locked into a personal bubble, is what's happened. Just, to help people understand astral versus dream, if you're wondering, right? Dream is more of we created a personal bubble around us. And we're swimming in that bubble all night. Okay? And literally just doing our thing, experiencing all kinds of stuff, creating stuff, processing stuff, but it's this big bubble. Okay? So if one can travel in the astral and they see someone dreaming, they'd see that. They're sitting in a bubble. Someone's sitting in a bubble. Now, if someone can, and they're skillful enough, that astral person can enter the bubble, right? And that's kind of when we experience, oh yeah, they visited me. Or a deceased relative came and spoke to me. Now, sometimes it's made up. It's your own personal projection, true. But what I would add, sometimes it is possible maybe they did come. And usually you get true visitations usually by people who know how to get to you, right? So that's why a close relative knows how to get to you. They still have a connection to you. So there's kind of a doorway in, right? It's kind of a safeguard. Or a high-level teacher, master can get to you if they need to, or a guide can come to you in various forms. But that's what's going on. We sit in a bubble at night, swimming around in it, okay? Around our bed, okay? So, but those bubbles are within the astral realm, as it's called. It's a whole universe. The best way to think of it is these are universes, parallel dimensions, right here, right now, okay? And there are levels to it. It gets so complicated so quickly. And I mean, look, if you're interested, go down the rabbit hole. There's all kinds of rabbit holes. But the point is, this is the gist of it, okay? They talk about it as different levels to it. And we're eventually segueing into the topic of today. The idea is that these astral planes, one level removed from the physical, is what's usually referred to as the heavens and hells of the religions. That's what they're referring to in Dante's Inferno. It's a story about traversing the astral realms, the different levels. What is it, 9 or something he talks about?
Mm-hmm. 9 circles.
Yeah. So you see this story over and over again. And some religions get a little bit too attached to some of their astral journeys and make it a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We know some of those religions, and so then those become the end-all be-all. And the ancients, if you start Googling what some of the ancients believed all over the world in terms of afterlife, reincarnation, they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about different levels of existence that you move through after death. They're not permanent, but they can seem permanent because of different nature of time, is the thing, right? So, who's seen What Dreams May Come by Robin Williams? Remember it. Only 1? 2? Go see it.
It's great.
It's on Prime, it's I think from the 90s at this point, it's a great movie by itself, but it does a wonderful depiction of what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just outlines it perfectly. It's a great story, but it shows, what happens. Robin Williams' wife commits suicide and gets lost in the astral realm, what we would call a hellish zone, because of the pain she died with. She committed suicide. So that pain she died with is literally what she's overwhelmed with after death. She's lost in it for a while. And to her it seems like eternity. Right? And then the story goes on, Robin Williams has to go find her and, finds her, pulls her out. And then she kind of wakes up, oh my gosh. And then they both then traverse the rest of the astral planes, and then at the end it shows how they come back, reincarnate. And so what's fascinating is the entire ancient world talked about these planes of existence right here, right now. They can be accessed if you know how. We all access it in dream time, some better than others. But after death, you move through them as well. And most traditions will talk about some way where an aspect of your soul then comes back. What we call reincarnation, obviously.
Well, what about whenever, so you see the light in some Sahara and you decide to turn around? Does that just take the base level of astral, or is it infinite, anything's possible type of thing?
That's a big rabbit hole question, right? The kind of what Corey's referring to is what was really made popular with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In the early 1900s, it was translated for the first time from Tibetan sources. And in there, the Tibetan tradition talks about the death process in detail. And I don't want to go into too much right now because I, down the road, plan to have a whole talk about death itself. I think it's important, and certain people have requested it, and they can't be here today. So I told them that I'd wait. But that's, you're referring to, yes, the death process, there's a specific process to death that includes a light, right? And every religion talks about it. And so how you handle that light kind of dictate, and it's really, in the Tibetan tradition, they say, it's the light of your consciousness. That's what it is. Right? And just, real briefly, you will experience the light based on how clear you are. How much you, and what that means, that's complicated, right? How much you've healed, how much you've worked through your trauma, how connected you are to your own divinity, right? How much love, compassion, truthfulness you've been able to harbor, all these things that we've talked about before is what creates clarity in you, right? But based on that, that's what creates clarity of consciousness when I say that, right? And based on that, that's what you'll see after your last breath, right? And that is depicted as a light. And the light can be bright or dim or dark, depending on the person. And based on how they react to it, so the Tibetan Book of the Dead goes into, okay, be careful how you react. And the Tibetan Book of the Dead is trying to teach you how to properly react to it. That's why it was written originally. And so it talks about, they call it the bardo. The term bardo is the time between death and being born again, is what they call the bardo. And it's usually how much we're traversing the inner planes, the astral, the mental, the inner planes. It's what's called the bardo in the Tibetan tradition. So based on how you react to it will dictate what happens next, is the idea, right? And they go into detail, lots of detail. I encourage you to go read it. And look, guys, if you don't want to read these things, just look it up on Wikipedia. They do a great job. If you like AI, if you don't like AI, do Wikipedia, right? But my point is, it's all out there. And you can get the gist of these things really quickly, easily these days online, with the beauty of the computer, right? So, but based on how you react in that moment to that light will dictate where it pulls you. And how you react is going to be based on how much you've cultivated in your lifetime, is the thing. You're not going to be able to fake anything once you get there. And that's kind of what, the Judeo-Christian world is talking about, judgment. Yeah, you will be judged. In essence, you're judging yourself. Your higher soul is judging you, but to you, your higher soul looks like God. Because it kind of is. It's the closest reflection we can get to such a thing we call God, right? And so you kind of understand kind of where it's all going. So, yeah, you might see Jesus. You might see the Buddha. You might see your grandma. You might see random bald dude. You might see, an animal, if you're attuned to that. You might see just light. But that's the whole point. Your experience will be dictated kind of based on your own programming that you lived with. So if you had religious programming, that's what you got. Primarily in the beginning. You're going to be swamped in that for a while, right? And so the light may come as Christ for, if you're from the Christian world. And so, how are you going to handle that? Say in front of Christ. Then what? Right? What do you do then? What the Tibetan Book of the Dead will say, though, usually most humans will either run in fear, hide in shame, or something similar. Right? They're not going to be able to handle it. That will pull you to a specific place. This gets into karma. Right? The real topic for today. And we still haven't meditated, I know that. Or even chanted. Do we want to do that, or do you want to get back?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. We'll do it when Corey gets back.
It's time.
Yes.
I told you, once I get talking, I will keep going. If you ask me questions, I will keep going
And we will let you.
relentlessly. But the meditation, the chanting, these are practical things that are so important that are kind of a whole different category than just talking. Because the talking is great, and it motivates you, it guides you, it gives you inspiration, it clarifies things. But true spirituality is you've got to put things into practice, like I've talked about before. And across the ages, looking within and vocalizing in a certain way have been traditional ways of putting these things into practice, right? So with the chanting, we're going to do Om, and as we do the Om, like I said, be mindful of these stages of the sound you're creating. The Ah, the Oo, the Om, and the silence. Okay? Hold the silence for as long as you want. So, go at your own pace. We're not trying to synchronize here. Okay? And so, it's going to end up being like a drone you're going to hear with everyone. Okay? And that's kind of cool. It's kind of what we want. But go at your own pace. Hold the silence for as long as you want. But the utterance in the mouth, the way your mouth forms is going to help you kind of connect to the understanding of each stage. So ah, oo, as you're bringing the sound, you're creating the sound, obviously opening the mouth, creating the sound, letting things in. The oo, you can make the om as long as you want, and it's kind of the continuity of life, of creation is the idea, right? Everything comes to a close. You can kind of prolong that if you want, right? But eventually it does end. And once it ends, be still with that. You're still here, even when it's ended. You're still here. Something's still here. And then you begin again. Another cycle, and that's the whole point. It's cycles of creation and destruction. Creation and destruction is the nature of reality, the universe, right? And so that's kind of what you're emulating here with Om, okay? So we'll do this for just a brief time, say like 5 minutes, okay? I'm gonna set a timer here. A little dong will go off, and then when it goes off, you kind of come out of it, stop the Om. And then once you do, then I want you just to sit in your silence, okay? Try not to move, if you can. Be as still as you can. If you have a technique, you already do, great, do that. But ideally, if you have a technique where you focus on something, your breath, you can continue the Om inside, internally, as an internal chant. And that's a thing, okay? So you can do that as well. Continue the Om. You can just simply watch your breath. You can connect the Om with your breath. All these things you can do, right? Or you can simply just be still and just notice what you notice. You can notice your thoughts. You can notice your body. But the point is, if you don't have a technique, just be with yourself in full acceptance. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, whatever aches and pains you notice, whatever itches, whatever you feel in general, if you're hungry, if you're bored, just notice it. If you're excited, if you're feeling tingly stuff all over, just notice it. And you can treat that as a practice, okay? And we'll do that so we'll do the chanting for a good 2 minutes. It'll seem like a long time, okay? And then after the 2 minutes will go off, I'm going to set the timer. I'll reset the timer. Everyone hear that? Okay, that's what it sounds like. So I'll reset the timer, and we'll do a 10-minute meditation. Something doable for most people. Whoever's been meditating, that's not a big deal. If you haven't been meditating, it may seem daunting, but you can do it. Okay? Anyone here has ever meditated? Raise your hand. I'll call you out. Okay, good. All right, so let's go. And I'll kind of lead you through this, so we're just going to start now. Om. if you need to.
Quick question, whenever I'm in full lotus and I do like a deep meditation, my lower body starts to fall asleep. Is that normal? I was pretty sure that just meant I was going deep into it and disconnecting from the body.
It's normal. It's expected, especially in full lotus.
Yeah.
You're pushing it with full lotus. You know, that's the full lotus is considered in Hatha Yoga tradition. It's considered the pinnacle seated posture, right? So, if you open up a Hatha Yoga book, you go through all the asanas and poses, and at the end it'll say the meditative poses. There'll be a chapter on the meditative poses, okay? And then at the end of that, it'll say Padmasana, full lotus, okay? So because it's considered the pinnacle posture for a human to be in, that maximizes meditation. So it's meant to be hard. Is the point. So that's why it is hard, right? And the reason it's there, it's because it's meant to open up all the channels in your legs. It's kind of now the more practical understanding of it, because the way it's opening up your ankles, knees, and hips, it's to maximize the opening of all the meridians and nadis and channels down your legs, to your hips, to your feet. Because from the energetic cultivation point of view, right, when we're talking about what's called cultivating the chi, the prana in the body, that whole avenue, they talk about the opening of the leg channels have to happen first before you can go anywhere, okay? Because the leg channels, everything here corresponds to what you're holding in your first three chakras, which corresponds to all of our basic issues, traumas and pains, right? First, second, and third chakra have to do with our basic needs, sexuality, creativity, personal power, relationships, all of the normal human stuff, right? And so, idea is, if you have any issues, traumas, blockages in any of those realms, you hold it in those chakras, in this part of your body, your pelvis. So important, okay? Digestion, urination, reproductive system, right? Everything big is here. And therefore, that will reflect in the channels going down your legs. So when you do a seated, the reason there's seated meditation poses in these systems is to open the legs, the hips, the knees, the ankles first. That's why, you see? And so you're supposed to then feel stuff in your legs. It's gonna fall asleep, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna vibrate, you're gonna feel muscle spasms, all kinds of stuff, pain, right? And of course your low back, that's kind of also the first place. So this whole area becomes the first place where you feel your tension. That's why. So yes, your legs are gonna fall asleep.
Yeah, no, I figured it was just like
Yeah.
kind of like the sensory deprivation, like you're disconnected.
And you're maximizing how quickly it's gonna fall asleep by sitting in full lotus, right? Most people can't do that from the beginning. You have to work into it, right? But that's kind of what it's for, the full lotus posture. If you can do it, if you're already there, you know, sit like that for as long as you can when you're meditating. Go as long as you can. When you're gonna die, open your legs, relax, right? And that's kind of like you'll be able to push it slowly, for sure.
When you're releasing those traumas that are in your stomach, does that come out through your legs? Or is it commonly, how do most people, or just
Anyway, in every way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing to realize is when you're releasing stuff, and we'll get into what that stuff is because that's directly related to karma. Okay? So when you're releasing your stuff, tensions, traumas, toxins, okay, it can come up infinite ways. And usually it comes up in ways you don't expect. So your knee pain could be fear about your dad you had when you were Young. That's coming up as knee tightness and pain. And you have no idea. You're just sitting there feeling the knee pain. And that's the beauty of the meditative path. Okay, breathe. Let it be there. Feel the pain. Can you stay with it? And that's the whole idea. That's where the mindfulness comes in, right? Learning how to be with the pain, breathe, don't react to it. What we talked about, before. And if you can do that, then what is the pain, right? It's, from this point of view, an energy blockage, right, is the idea. That's what the pain is, from the energetic point of view. So the energy blockage is there because something is keeping it stuck there, usually tension. Physical tension, mental attachment, or, a desire not to feel it, right? And so that's where you apply the mindfulness. Okay, I'm gonna let myself feel the pain, fine. Or the back pain, I'm gonna be there. And then as you get better at doing that, that allows you to relax. Physically, mentally, emotionally, you start to relax. As you start to relax, that relaxation allows the energy to start moving better through there, right? The tension opens up the channels. That's what I mean by opening the channels of the legs. So energy starts moving through, you start to release, feel better, and so you're actually healing fear about your dad through your knee pain, right? That's an example of how it can come up in so many different ways, is the idea.
So how about those of us who are sitting or on chairs and not sitting in a full lotus position?
So you're not going to be activating anything in your legs. That's the way to think of it, right?
And so I don't have any pain.
Right. So
will I have more difficulty reaching what the purpose of all this is?
No. So it's the key to understand is it depends on your goal. Okay? So what we're talking about is basically what's called transformation of the body. Okay? Healing, releasing tension, moving what's called the chi, the energy, the prana through the body so that you feel better. You have more vitality, right? You heal. And so you don't have to do that, is the thing. You can if you want to. And if you do it, you're going to feel better in your body, is the thing, right? You're going to have more vitality, more youthfulness, all these things. Organs are going to work better. So that's why it's there, right? That's why it's always been in yoga, qigong, tai chi. All these are based on cultivating that, moving the channels, acupuncture. General healing, as we call healing in holistic healing, is based on that, moving the energy, clearing the channels, clearing the trauma and the toxins, right? So the point is, though, when you get still, okay, and what that means, when your mind gets still, in the stillness, remember the yin-yang picture that everyone's seen, right? You start with something small, it becomes big, that big thing suddenly spawns something tiny that becomes big, one's yin, one's yang, right? Goes in a circle. So the idea is, what that means from this point of view is, when there's pure 100% yin, yin is stillness. Okay, yin is the feminine understanding of this, and so when that goes to stillness, you birth yang, active energy, right? So whoever's had a pet, their cat, their dog, and you're petting them, they feel like mush, right? When they're super relaxed, just laying there, and you pet, their muscles are jelly, right? They got no tension usually in their body, ideally, right? Especially if they're young. But you startle them, what's going to happen? A cat can jump in the air like that in a millisecond, right? 3 or 4 feet in the air. How do they do that? People who are into martial arts kind of understand this. The energy comes from the stillness, the relaxation. The more relaxed you are, the more your chi is flowing, the more your energy is open and clear and flowing. You see? And so when you need it, you can then direct it, focus, into magnified energy, is the idea. So when your mind gets still, and that's where eventual most meditative practices lead to, a stillness of the mind. And it's a whole process, right? It's not easy. But as you traverse that and get your mind still enough, that unleashes and awakens energy. That's what we've talked about before. That's the Kundalini. That will awaken as you get more still. That's tied in with channeled opening. So the point is, sitting like this and the whole realm of yoga, hatha yoga, the postures, the asanas that we know of, right? They're meant to accelerate this process. That's it. To answer your question. It's just meant to accelerate it. Because as you're holding the postures, right, you're just, bending forward, holding a posture, right? Well, in that posture, you're activating certain muscle groups, certain fascia, certain tendons, you're feeling it here and here. Wherever you're feeling it, those are doorways to release. Okay? So if you're not activating it, the doors are closed. So when you're sitting in a chair, the doors of your legs are closed. That's it. You follow? And if you're sitting with your back against a chair, your spine is closed. The doors in your spine. And all that means is you're not going to feel much, probably in your spine or your legs. You're going to be able to relax pretty well, which is good in the beginning to just practice the techniques of meditation, right? But ultimately what you want to do is, as you get better at it, you want to move away from back support. You want to move to the floor eventually, if you can, as much as possible. There are different ways to sit. You don't have to sit full lotus. There are a variety of ways to sit that are better. You can put cushions underneath and make all kinds of fancy stuff. It's comfortable. But the point is, the more you do that, it opens doorways in your joints, in your spine specifically, to release what you need to accelerate this process of releasing our tensions, toxins, traumas. Does that make sense? Answer your question? So the answer is no, you don't need to do these things. But if you can, it's really helpful, is the idea, right? And so if you look at, say, for example, a lot of Buddhist traditions, Zen practitioners, right, Theravada practitioners, none of them are doing yoga. You never see a Zen person doing yoga. Or even you talk to them and you start talking about Kundalini, they'll be like, I know that. No, I don't want to talk about that. That's nothing. And you're like, and if your whole practice is based on Kundalini yoga, you're like, that's all I do. What do you mean? So the thing is, what the Buddha talked about is these things happen automatically once the stage is set. So the Zen practitioner is getting still. That's what they're focused on, right? First and foremost, they're getting still. They're really focusing on the technique of meditation they're doing to get their mind as still as possible, naturally. When they can get there, naturally the channels open. Naturally the Kundalini awakens. But they don't talk about it in their tradition, right? And if they go to if they go to their teacher and go, oh yeah, I'm feeling all this cool stuff here, teacher will be like, shut up, go meditate. Right? We know these stories, right? And so that's what they're doing. They're pushing you to ignore that, to focus more on just getting still. But their Kundalini is getting activated. They're releasing stuff. But they're not focusing on it because they have a more hyper-focused way of doing things. You see? But on the other hand, you've got the more what's called the body-based traditions that are doing Hatha Yoga, Taoist Qigong, Neigong, Kundalini Yoga-based traditions, breath work, any of that stuff. Focusing on sensations in the body. You're focusing on your body first. You see your body and your energy body first to cultivate that. And it's just a different route to the same spot up the mountain. A long answer to your question. Yeah. So the point is, though, if you get deeper into the meditative path, you want to eventually get off the chair or get on the floor. Okay, so let's talk about karma, right? Because we all have heard that word. And we all have a general understanding of it. But is there more to it? Yes, there is the idea. And there's a very practical understanding of the deeper layers of karma that's really helpful to tie in a general spiritual approach that you may have, right? So, let's talk about karma. What do we know about karma?
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect, okay.
Point-based system of the game.
So it's like a law. It's like a cosmic law that's in place. Okay, what else?
It means action.
So action, it kind of designates something that's being done in the moment.
How we react to stuff influences the strength of subsequent reaction.
Oh yeah, there we go, deeper now. So that's kind of a deeper mechanism of how karma is working and playing out in us based on our reactions. Yeah.
Not just from this life, but from previous
Aha! Okay, so now it's kind of something, this law, mechanism, that is kind of beyond us and extending, connecting our lifetimes, right?
Well, even family, right? Because you're affected by the
Family, right,
and
okay.
social.
community, yeah.
So we talk about family karma.
Mhm.
We talk about national karma. A lot of what we're reaping now. We talk about racial karma, planetary karma, solar system karma, galactic karma, universal karma. I don't know. Our segment of universe karma, wherever we.
Does that mean you could go micro and say there's cellular?
Maybe
karma?
cellular karma, right? Microbiome karma, organ karma. Yeah? Atomic karma? Subatomic karma? So what are we referring to when you say these things though? We're referring to, okay, there's a mechanism at play which is kind of dictating how things are playing out, right? And there's effect to every cause. It's also kind of dictating how things are playing out. What about free will versus predestination? Versus karma? Right? It's what we all want to think about all the time. How's that fit in?
What is it?
I don't know, I think it's like you have the free will, but your soul's kind of already mapped it out for you to
You
make
already
those
made the
decisions as you
choice,
go.
Yeah.
You already did.
You just
Yeah.
don't remember.
You guys speak very wisely.
Yeah.
Because this is what the ancients would say, right? When you open up some of the earliest references to karma, which is, again, it's in the Vedas, it's in the Upanishads, it's in the Rig Veda, it's some of the earliest sources of the writings we have from India, where karma is discussed in this regard. And that's what these sages are dialoguing with each other in these works. And they're saying, okay, look, they ask the same question. What about free will and predestination? And then another sage answers, well, it's both. And then another one comes in, well, it can only be that. But then another one goes, well, sure, but it can also be that. But it can also be both.
Well, doesn't this play into, it's like there's no being is truly evil. It's kind of like you chose this path to help influence and grow everyone else's karma so we can all kind of move up.
So the concept of evil then quickly comes in. Dun 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 dun. The biggie. Why is there evil?
Well, nobody thinks they're evil. It's all perspective. A lot of the time you think you're doing good or you think the person deserves it because it happened to you. It's all about your personal perspective of how you justify things. But I don't think anybody, maybe besides some sociopaths or something, are truly evil.
Was Sauron thinking he was doing evil?
Right.
Right.
Or
No.
Emperor
Or was that
Palpatine?
generational?
As Vader? Does he know? I mean, I would say Vader knew what he was doing. You know, he knew that he's inflicting suffering on others on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And he can, and he could, and so he did.
Well, did that come from his own suffering?
Came from
Ah.
seeking power.
Yes, where did it come from? Right? where does evil come from? You know, is it a massive galactic being that's spawning it
Idea of evil.
from itself, right? Or is it an intrinsic part of the plane of existence we live in?
Does that get into like other beings kind of influencing like the archons?
Oh,
or the
interesting,
flyers?
right?
Mm-hmm.
The way the Gnostics would look at it, right? The Taoists really specialized in that.
The lower vibrational
Mhm.
beings.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
how do they fit in?
cults are
They
things of
feed on the
frequency,
energy.
Mhm.
so
Right.
that we don't stay at that level, because that level exists the same as ours.
Exactly.
Well, and I wouldn't be on this path if it wasn't for the evil stuff.
Right, for
You
the
know.
trial.
Aha.
It's like that keeps
Yeah.
me
So
on
that
track.
plays into
Yeah.
that.
Because if
yeah.
everything was
Right.
beautiful, I'd just get lazy. And,
Right,
Yeah.
everything's fine, what do I need to worry
Be
about?
fat
Need it,
and
I
happy.
do.
Yeah, it's like we need it. I need it. I don't know about you guys, but
Right.
I need it.
And so that's what they would say, that this, generally in most places they call this like the middle realms,
Mhm.
even in the Norse tradition, Midgard.
Mhm.
Everybody's familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
In the Buddhist world, this is the middle realms. In the Hindu world, this is like the middle, like the midsection where we live, where the forces of good and evil are
Inside.
both simultaneously existing.
Do you think that ascended masters lived so many lives, like, and in some of their lives they could have been evil?
Mhm.
The Buddha was.
Maybe they
Well, the
needed
Buddha
to
was
fulfill a
the-
role.
Throw in ascended masters. Where do they fit in?
Ascended, yeah.
How do they get there? Right?
Yeah, how did they get there?
I mean, there. If you get into some of the actual, when you go over to the east and look at some of the stories of their ascended masters, okay, like I've kind of mentioned, the Siddhas, the Tibetan tradition, the Kashmiri Shaivite, the South Indian Tamil traditions, even the Chinese, they have immortal traditions in Taoism. They talk about their lives. It's really fun and interesting. They talk about how they were born, their parents, what they did as kids, what their livelihood was, the mistakes they made, right? Who was it? Was it Milarepa in the Tibetan tradition? He was like a murderer,
Yeah.
right?
In his
He killed people
in past life.
in that lifetime.
In that life.
Yeah,
In
in
that
the same
lifetime.
lifetime, right?
In the same lifetime,
Yeah.
right? And then finally, his karma allowed him to awaken.
Mhm.
Interesting, right?
And then he probably had a guilt complex he had to get rid of.
Well, he had lots of healing to do, yeah.
Mhm.
Of course, right? And he was in a tradition that gave him instructions on how to heal. That's right. That's the thing. That's what you need, right? And that's what's kind of missing from the West. So, yeah, there were numerous stories of these people who were pretty awful, and then they go through an awakening, and they get on a path, and it's described how they awakened and to the extent they awakened, and they went all the way in certain traditions to what we would call the ascended master, which is a whole different topic. We're not going to get into that right now. And, well, we have it in Paul, right? Or so the story goes in the Christian world. Now, what's interesting to throw in, because we live in a Christian world here, it's like there's a big difference here with how modern day Christianity, especially Protestant and Catholicism, kind of sees things. They talk about sin, right? Original sin. We're born with sin. Okay. The good doctrine of karma does the same thing. We're born with sin. Sure. We're all sinful. From what I see, the difference is, right, in the Christian, Islamic, Judeo-Christian traditions, where they're focused on sin in this way, there's no way to change.
Right.
You're always a sinner. So you accept your sinning. You suck. I accept it. I'm going to continue sucking and keep doing sucky things.
Right.
So that becomes part of your identity, and
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you have to believe that someone is going to then save you
Mhm.
after that.
Mhm.
Right.
that is, right?
By Christ. So
But the ancient way of looking at karma was like, yeah, we come in with lots of sin. That's part of being human, like we're talking about. In this realm, good and evil, coming with sin. We're fighting sin all the time. All of us are. What is sin is a different topic. But we're struggling with it all the time in so many different ways. Each one of us being human. But there's a way to transform yourself here and now so that you don't have to sin as much and reap the consequences of sinning. That's the whole idea. There are consequences to sinning, right? Human laws and internal effects to doing things that harm others and ourselves. So there's a way out. Both systems talk about a way out, but the idea, the ancient system of karma, which was predominant in the world, was that there is a way out by understanding what karma is and then working with the process. And then that's what then is this whole spiritual system we're talking about. The ancients spoke of. Spirituality is literally a path of transmuting your karma. Plain and simple. This is another way of saying it, right? Okay. Well, here's another twist, which is really interesting. When I discovered this years ago, it was like, oh, wow. Because a lot of people talk about it, but the Jains in India, Jain, who's heard of Jainism? It's one of kind of the more tucked away religions of the world from ancient India. One of the oldest religions of ancient India. And it's very similar to Hinduism and Buddhism. Some slight differences. They have Buddha-like figures in their understanding of things. Jainism focused on karma. They specialized in it. And it's kind of the thing. Different religions and spiritual systems specialized in different things is the thing when you start getting into it. So Jainism focused on karma. That was their whole thing. They hyper-focused on it. And they describe 30 plus different types of karma. And what's interesting is they talked about karma particles. They call karmins. Karmin particles.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and they said these particles resonate to you based on your actions.
Like a magnetism.
Yes, and we kind of talk about it, right? And when we talk about karma, we talk about attracting bad karma, good karma, right? So the Jains were trying to outline that thousands of years ago in detail. They talked about these karman particles that we draw to us based on our actions that are already permeating the universe.
things come to you. Do bad things come to you.
Right. And so they were saying these karman particles are what attract the good and bad things.
So they like materialized it, like as part of.
They gave it a
So
material representation as these particles.
Is that kind of
Right.
like the subatomic karma that you were talking about?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. And they said from these karmic particles arise the elemental particles and all of the other particles in creation leading up to the subatomic to the atomic to...
Is this a
Gross
physical
matter.
thing, this particle, or this is a
Is
spiritual
it
thing?
the-
I mean,
Yes.
physical things beyond our physics. I'm sure there are ET realms out there who can see karmic particles, I don't know, and are playing with
I
them.
see one right there.
But when we read about people, teachers, masters, beings, clearing karma, transferring karma, or even, Christ taking karma, this kind of explains it. It's like, oh, interesting. What if it's possible? And the Jains will talk about high-level beings are able to move, transfer, and shift karma for others as these particles.
Well,
that kind of the idea with Jesus? He takes on everybody's
Exactly,
karma, and
right.
then the negative thing happens.
I think
to him.
that's what,
Yeah.
you know, that's what Christianity is based on. That's what it's referring to,
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
right? Of course, the Jains were saying there's not only been one person that's done
Yeah.
that. It's the
Right,
difference,
yeah.
right? But it's a possibility based on this reality of these things that are part of reality at the most basic level that we're all interacting with, working with constantly, that's creating our own karma, our good and bad effects. What we're attracting, resonating with, bringing to us, all these things. Interesting, right?
I've heard some stuff about it getting kind of complicated, like the type of energy you use if you do stuff like that. Because someone was telling me about, like, if you use like Kundalini energy, that's supposed to be like a personal self energy that doesn't interact with other people. But you would want to use like prana or external energy.
I would say most people who talk about transferring karma are imagining. My opinion. Because I think we're talking about a level of reality that is so far beyond what we're aware of. Someone could do that if, like we were talking about at the beginning of today, if they could function beyond the senses. An awakened person, an enlightened being,
I
right?
think you could influence somebody, right? Like convince them. That
Well,
their karma's
yeah,
wrong.
we are doing that all the
Yeah.
time, indirectly. What kind of, you know, the idea of a person taking someone's karma away.
Mhm.
Away or transmuting it?
However you want to talk about it.
Okay.
It's kind of, you know, it becomes the same thing in essence,
I
right?
remember like in the Bible when the Jewish people laid their hands on the goat and they transferred all of it from the whole, everyone, and then they sent it up to the desert.
Mhm.
You're taking all the sins of.
Yeah. It gets a little fuzzy because then we're also talking about, okay, there's transference of energy, kind of what you're saying, there's transference of different forms of energy,
Yeah.
right? Shaktipat is a word used in the Eastern traditions. An enlightened being can transfer divine energy to you to help you awaken. It's called Shaktipat. Mortals can't do that, right? But we work with Reiki. Right.
Yeah.
People, like, we are using energy all the time, right? Love is an energy, right? When you're when you're holding someone with love, you feel it,
Devotion.
right? So there's energy too, and you could say that's connected to the Karman particles in essence. But the idea that, okay, karma itself is connected to this very subtle layer of reality where these particles interact, which then helps explain, you know, attracting good karma. We say it all the time, but what is that? An invisible what? Something coming, giving something to us? Now, the Taoists in the shamanic traditions would often talk about beings who are the agents of karma. And we kind of talk about that too sometimes, right? Where they are the administrators of karma, that the Greeks talked about the fates, right? These different ideas of these different conscious beings who are administering these forces to mere mortals like us, right? This idea of that, which is interesting, are they then transferring Karman particles and they know how to direct it? There's that whole idea that the Taoists and the shamanic traditions, you know, that's what these rituals were based on in the ancient world, to do that.
That'd be like making a contract with some kind of dark
Contracts,
entity,
and the
they
other
bring
side,
it,
yes.
But you have to pay the toll in the end.
Right, right. That's a lot more tangible to what we know, right, these days. But in Buddhism, they then dove deeper into karma in a practical way and then talked about the intention of things. Now that becomes really important, right? When you do something accidentally versus when you do something intentionally. The idea is there's a difference. And we all kind of know that, but that's kind of the understanding of the deeper karma mechanism, that intention plays a massive role in the effect, the cause and effect chain of reaction that happens from that, and how it affects you, right? How do we kind of figure that? Well, what if we bring in now what we've talked about before, the understanding of mindfulness again? Okay? So, again, what is that? You experience something, you feel something in your senses or your mind, you have a reaction. You like it or you don't like it, or you're neutral. But usually we have either a liking or a disliking to some experience we're having. Based on that, we extend out our own energy, our prana or chi, towards that. If you don't like it, we extend it out to push it away. If we like it, we extend out to pull it towards us. Okay? We're doing that all the time. Even now, as you guys sit here, you're doing that. In subtle ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. So, this movement of energy we're throwing out there constantly. If it's got something tangible that we're reacting to, the energy is kind of taken up with that. It kind of absorbs that. And you give your energy to that, is how we talk about it. Either by resistance or by pulling it towards you, we're giving our energy to that. Well, the energy goes somewhere, and that object of your energy takes that energy, what usually happens? It returns it to us. It somehow gets reflected back. In some way or another, right? You give love to someone, you usually feel it back sometimes. Usually, ideally. And if you don't, it goes somewhere else. And you feel that difference. But the point is, you feel the effect of the energy you're putting out. You react with anger to someone who's angry. Something very obvious, you feel that. If you don't react with anger to someone who's angry, that's a whole different feeling. A whole different set of results happens, usually.
So would that mean, like, when you're meditating and you're not judging, you're just accepting things the way they are, you're not attracting or reflecting anything, and that way things can just move. Is that what happens?
Exactly. Energy will move. Plain and simple. That's the thing. Always.
I think
Right?
you said it perfectly too, in one of the last times we talked about keeping it in the peripheral, but not making it the main focus. Like,
And
it's
that's
not
the
as
practical
active here.
application of it. How you work with it. Yeah. Can you keep it there? The thought, sensation, feeling, the object, whatever it is. Can you notice it and stay neutral? That's the practice of mindfulness, obviously, right? The neutral means you're not pulling it towards you or pushing it away, right? Now, as a side note, just to make sure, we don't go sideways with this, the reaction isn't the problem, okay? Because the energy we put out is what furthers creation. Obviously, right? If we do nothing, everything just sits. And that's the whole idea with creation, right? Prime source moved. Is the general understanding. God did something. And then creation ensued. Before that, what was? That's a whole philosophy, right? So, the same thing. Our energy has to go somewhere. We are literally channeling energy from the universe, from the source, every nanosecond. Energy is moving through us, right? In other words, people can talk about a human is literally just a channel, an instrument, continuously of energy. It's moving through us constantly, right? Either mind, body, some aspect of us. Food is the obvious example, right? Comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. Ideally, it's got to come out. If it doesn't come out, you're in trouble. So, food is like the typical example of literally how energy is moving through us constantly. Emotions, thoughts, it's supposed to move. And if it doesn't, that's the reaction, right? If there's resistance to it, you dampen the movement of it, that's when you have consequences. That's what causes the effect. Your reaction. So, you can't help but act, being human. We are always creating karma, is the idea. what the idea of karma in relation to spirituality means, though, is if the karma is polarized, negative or positive, that's what keeps you locked in the flow of karma. You see? You can neutrally experience karma.
Like the middle path.
The middle path is how it's talked about, yeah.
Because this is the balancing of it, the
The
karma.
balancing of it.
That's how you escape samsara.
Right.
Yeah.
Samsara is the cycle of death and rebirth. From the Eastern perspective, it's called samsara. Coming back. Reincarnation, which we haven't talked about yet, but it's all connected to this, right? That's called samsara. So, the way different ancient systems would give their nuance to this, some looked upon it as negative, some looked upon it as positive, this whole cycle of having to come back again and again and again. Some saw it as a curse, blessing, in between, you name it. Depending where you go, it's going to be like somewhere in between, is the idea. But the point is, they would talk about it as a thing. And we even kind of feel it when we talk about, yeah, we're stuck here. I want to go home. I want to return home. Right? We're saying the same thing. We feel stuck in this body, in the flesh, our senses. You know, we're locked in. We can't seem to get out of it, no matter how hard we try, except when you're in deep sleep and things turn off. But you're not really out of it, your brain is just off. And you come back online. Okay? But, and the whole thing is, these ancients gave us ways to unlock it, to experience moments of escape, and we try to create the escape, right, with various means all the time, which aren't sustainable, but, you know, they're fun sometimes, and, you know, they're learning tools and things like that. And spiritual systems were created to create more permanent means of not being so locked in, but that's the whole point, this idea that we're locked in, descent into matter, right? They talk about the soul getting trapped in the body, like all these old ways of talking about this thing, right? So that's the samsara that we're talking about. And so the idea is the soul doesn't have just one chance, as opposed to kind of what the Western mind has kind of been indoctrinated with. No chance or one chance. You know, atheists, it's no chance. It's like, this is it. It doesn't matter. But in the Judeo-Christian point of view, it's just one chance. But the thing is, the ancient world predating the Judeo-Christian mindset, and even in Judaism, there is a term for reincarnation. Gilgul, I think, is the term. Something like that. But in the Kabbalistic traditions of Judaism and Christianity, reincarnation is openly talked about. It's part of the system. The Sufis of Islam talk about reincarnation. And of course, the rest of the ancient world openly embraced reincarnation. Plato and Socrates talked about reincarnation very openly. The ancient Greeks did. The Gnostics did. But the idea that there is a part of us that is beyond the physical body that returns. The gist of it. Okay, now the details, there's a lot more detail to that you can kind of pull apart, but that's the gist. That the karma dictates how, when, and in what form you end up coming back as. And it's kind of the predestination part of it. From our point of view, it kind of looks like that. Sitting here, we're like, well, I'm stuck here. I didn't choose this. And our mind and body is saying that, right? The part of you that kind of was born and cultivated in this lifetime, that you know of to be you, right, is saying, well, I didn't choose this. But the idea is there's parts of you that you're not aware of that did choose this. Sorry. Or, good job. Either way you want to look at it. Yeah. it really wasn't really even a choosing in that sense, it's a cause and effect playing out of your actions from the past.
It's like a series of subtle choices.
Subtle choices.
That
Exactly.
it's not just one big choice.
Everything about you right now, the way you look, think, feel, your history, your parents, your experience, the idea is it was all laid out. And right now, this moment of whatever you're doing, breathing, listening to me, sitting here, is based on choices you made before. We kind of get that, right? You made the choice to be here, wear what you're wearing, eat what you ate, whatever, lived your life, this moment, it's all based on those past moments. Right? We get that. Now just extend that. Like a string of pearls. Each pearl is a lifetime. But there's a continuity. Right? Yeah, you don't remember those other pearls. Okay. But maybe you do. Maybe you have inklings, is the thing. Many of us do. Right? Many of your interests or dislikes are based on a lot of past life influence. People you hang around with. You probably have hung around with them before.
Is that the soul tribe?
Yeah. A lot of your relatives, you probably danced around them before. And the idea is, just like we do things based on familiarity, you go to the same places to eat, you wear the same clothes. You think it's kind of different at a soul level? Not really. You end up hanging around the same people. You end up hanging around the same planet for a while. Is the idea. You really don't hop around planets. Usually. You may once in a while, but generally speaking, there's planetary karma. That's kind of what it means. And you may end up spending tons of lifetimes on a certain planet. Anyone have a problem with reincarnation?
I was gonna ask about the planetary karma. So is that so if you have planetary karma that you accumulated while on Earth, does that mean that, because you were talking about going to different planets in different lifetimes, does that mean you have to relive lifetimes until you resolve your earthly karma before you can go somewhere different?
Kind of. It's a thing that certain settings give you opportunities in very specific ways, right? So if you have karma that, you have to release your fear of rivers. Well, you're going to probably be born in a place where there are lots of rivers.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not ever going to be able to clear your karma of fearing rivers if you're born in deserts. So it's like that, yeah. So based on the karma you've created, it's kind of specific to certain times and places. So you're going to have to almost in essence recreate similar settings. But it doesn't have to be linear. This is where it kind of gets fuzzy now. In my opinion, it doesn't have to be linear. We think of lifetimes as linear, not really. It doesn't even have to be in a human body. The story is the Buddha at the moment of his enlightenment he saw the whole string of pearls, all the details. Because, look, imagine how hard it is to have memories of childhood, right? How many memories of childhood do you have compared to when you were a kid living through it? And then think about how hard it is. We don't even want to remember the traumas, or we can't. And we don't even how many snapshots of first grade do you have? Right? So the thing is, we're either incapable, our nervous system is incapable of remembering, and we don't want to remember a lot of things, and there's just too much to remember. So with lifetimes, the same thing. It's just too much. And it can usually get in the way. Right? If someone that really hurt you is born as your mother next time, and you knew that in the beginning, that would change how you interact. So the Buddha saw the entire string of pearls because he had developed a state of mind where he could handle it. That's the thing. You have to be able to handle it. When you can embrace more of your discomfort, again, getting back to mindfulness, right? When you can embrace more of your pain, discomfort, your higher self was like, okay, remember this? Okay, remember this? I think someone was asking, you know, like, I want to know all the bad stuff I did that got me into this place. Okay, yeah, that's very healing and important. You got to be able to handle it. How many of us would go to sleep tonight knowing that you probably killed someone in a past life? Honestly, right? Or knowing that you got killed by someone you're close to. And what if you actually felt that pain again? Wouldn't work too well. You have to be able to handle it. So the point is, the story is the Buddha saw the entire string of pearls. Human and non-human. He talked about when he was animals. And non-human humanoids. Right? So that's the thing. So the point is, the karma dictates what you die with in terms of your karmic accumulation, which is the level of aversion and craving, back to mindfulness, right? The level of aversion and craving that you're still stuck with, that either you're conscious or unconscious of, that are dictating your thoughts and habits and patterns, that level of stuff that you die with the moment of your last breath is what you carry through. The good and the bad is the idea, right? So at your last breath, you can't hide anything anymore. You can't ignore anything. It comes up. The last breath and the next moment after the last breath. And you know, on and on. It's there. And all of that, whether you want to talk about it as like particles now, or forces, or other things directing you, it then propels you into certain avenues. You just start sliding down like a roller coaster. That's like, it just seems too big for you. So, now, another element to this that's really helpful to understand, that really helped me understand it is, and I've mentioned this before, the anatomy of the self, the anatomy of our being. Really what the model of the layers of what we consider the self, and what gets affected by what when you die versus when you're alive. That's really helpful to then understand, well, what gets reincarnated? If it's not your body, if it's not your mind, what? Oh, a soul? Well, what is that? Right? These fuzzy questions, they're just there. So, remember, for some of you that may remember or know, that the model that's most talked about in most of the ancient systems are the 5 levels of our being. The 5 layers, if you will. And different systems add more to it, some less, but the point is, the physical body, obviously. We talked about the astral / energetic / emotional / the Buddhists call it the sensation body, that bandwidth of our being. Very distinct, okay? And then above, beyond, however you want to think of it, the thought, mental body, the mind, as a distinct layer, part of ourselves. And remember, these layers, parts of ourselves, are talked about as literal universes. So it's really fascinating. Okay? So we talked about like the astral realm. People can leave their body at night, that's where they go. In your dream time, that's where you go. Okay? when you're feeling emotions, you're drawing from energy from that realm, is the idea. It's playing through you. There are beings who live there too, is the idea. It's a whole cosmos that people in the physical realm can't tap into, is the idea. Parallel dimensions. So there's the mental realm, is what I'm talking about. So it's a third layer, okay? And they talk about it as a realm of thought forms, thought beings that live there and influence us, doing their thing. We're also part of, multidimensionally, of course, right? Is the idea. The fourth layer is the what's called the causal, the volitional. That's the layer where the thoughts are coming from. The thoughts are playing and moving around in the mental realm, but the idea is they're being born from the fourth layer, the causal layer. Easiest word to understand, causal. So I just use that, the causal layer, right? And then beyond that is usually how they refer to it as the spiritual bliss body layer realm. People live there, doing their thing, pretty happy. Not like here, almost evil.
So is that like we're in the middle and that's all the way ascending to the top?
Well,
So do we
So,
all have 5 layers?
these 5 layers is kind of our anatomy,
Yeah.
right?
Clinch.
There were layers below that. That's how it's talked about. Okay, and that's a whole different topic. The hell realms, the underworld. It's a whole different thing that they talk about the cosmos tiered that way. Okay? But in terms of understanding our way, this model of 5 realms, layers, is going to now explain how reincarnation works, is the idea. Okay? So hold that thought for a future talk. So the idea is now, when you die, your physical body is gone, of course. Okay? Either buried or burnt. Or if you're Zoroastrian, eaten by the birds. That's what they would do, by the way, Zoroastrians. Now, most of your astral body also disintegrates with your physical body, is the idea. Especially, remember, there are layers within layers. So the upper astral then moves on, and that's where you kind of interact, usually after death. You're now shifted up in that realm. Okay? And you spend time dealing with that realm, usually after death. And that's what we call the heavens and hells of religions. And so, if your favorite thing was gardening, after you die, usually you probably find yourself in your favorite home gardening. Your favorite plants you're just going to be happy gardening with your favorite friends and relatives for a while because you're playing that out. That was your biggest attachment. You see? You kind of play that out for a while. Some people will call that a heaven, but the truth is it's temporary. Eventually that will fade. You can't sustain it, is the thing.
Burn out the karma?
Well, the energy of that, burns out. Okay? Unless you know how to sustain it, that's a whole different thing. There's, I'm sidetracked for just a second because this is a cool story. In the Buddhist world, in the Mahayana Buddhist world in China, Amitabha, anyone ever heard that word? Amitabha is a deity in the Mahayana Buddhist world. Very, very different from the Theravada Buddhist tradition, which is more of the original Buddhist system. But in the Mahayana world, Amitabha was a person from the past who was so powerful in meditating, he created his own heaven to help the people left to go to so they could keep meditating and fully awaken. Is the story.
Bodhisattva?
Yeah. But the story is he created a heaven with his concentration power.
Wow.
Think about that.
Wow.
How badass is that?
So essentially doing the work here now builds the astral body for our future.
How much you can focus, this kind of now gets back to concentration and focus. How much you can focus your mind is what dictates how long something will last. obviously, right? So the point is, you know, if you're able to, you can make long-lasting states in the astral realm that you can be in for some time. And that's kind of what happens. You know, the idea is that, you know, because these different tiers of the astral have been created for that purpose. You know, say you were really into meditation and you suddenly died of a disease, and, you know, but you're really on track, and you may be then kind of reborn in this astral realm where you get to live for a pretty long time in that regard. And you get to meditate all you want. You get some guidance now, some good instructions, you know, no distractions, you don't have to eat anymore, you don't have to sleep, right? Just keep meditating. That's the idea. So that's kind of the astral tier. So the point is now, usually most people will hang around in the astral until they kind of burn up some of the stuff, some of their attachments. And the first three tiers, the physical, astral, and the mental, is what you end up burning up. And that can take some time. But that's what ends up getting lost in terms of what you consider you. Mm-hmm. So then when you're reborn, in terms of reincarnation, remember the fourth tier is where the seeds are. That's where things are sprouting from. All the karma is being generated from there. That's where it stays. So those karmic seeds, as they're called, samskaras, birth new flows of karma, which then form the new 3 levels. You follow? Mm-hmm. So the idea is the 4th and 5th stage aren't reborn. They eventually will also dissolve and die is the idea, but we can't really conceive of that. Mm-hmm. What we're dealing with as incarnations are the first three levels, dissolving, forming, dissolving, forming, dissolving, forming, around the higher 2 tiers. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have an interesting thought. I mean, cause I'm kind of connecting with, I don't know if you know who Don Juan, the Yaqui Indian.
Yeah.
He has the idea that the mind is kind of the enemy. Like it's like the foreign what does he call it? The foreign installation put in us as a construct to kind of keep us outside of the present and kind of diminish our focus and what we can actually do in the moment. Does that kind of relate to some of the?
Yeah, the 3rd stage, the mind. You know, yeah, it is influenced. It is created. It is what's directly.
It's implanted in a sense.
You know, it's. It now depends on how you look at it. Mm-hmm. You know, it could be implanted by your own higher self. It could be implanted by others. Mm-hmm. Who knows how these things are playing out? Yeah, right. But that's the general idea. So that's how the reincarnation model ties in to karma, which then ties into literally what you're doing right now. Literally what you're choosing to do in this moment is what's creating the echoes and waves that are going out all around you. And they will return as reflections always, is the idea.
How is there a choice there? Like, he's saying choosing, but like, everything is kind of determined by...
Well, in this moment,
Okay.
there's the appearance of choice. But usually, the choices we make now are based on habitual patterns that are ingrained in us, right? Kind of if you think about it. So even eating, we're making the choice to eat, but it's a habitual pattern that our physical body has created, the act of eating that it feels like it needs. So you eat certain foods that you then have kind of programmed into you that you think you need, that you then create around you to have accessible, right? All these things seem to be kind of already kind of laid out. Mm-hmm. So that's what they call it, the cycle of samsara. You stay stuck in it. The choice is really an appearance for most people, because it actually kind of is. To truly make a choice, you have to do it out of a non-reactive state. You see, you can still choose the same thing. You can still eat the apple, right? But if you do it from a non-reactive state, you're not putting energy into it. That's a key difference, you see? To someone else, it may look the same. You're just eating an apple. But to you, there's an energetic dynamic that's different. You know, if you're eating it out of craving, I really need the apple because I'm hungry. It's a certain energy you put out into it. And so it comes back as this attachment to the apple that then kind of plays out, and blah, blah, blah. You think like, so you feel like you need it, you have to eat it again later. All these things play out. But you can choose not to eat the apple. Right? And so that's kind of the difference between someone who's stuck in the karmic samsara versus someone who is slowly pulling out of it. And that's why it's a process. You know, the truth is, yeah, we have choice, but most of our choices are kind of already preconditioned as well. Kind of break it down. Does that make sense?
You have to break the influence.
Yeah. Right.
Is that why fasting is it's connected to spirituality, and it disrupts that oh, I need the apple, and you realize you don't need it, and then you gotta kind of think through it, and you gotta struggle.
Right.
Intention.
But that's growth.
Any ascetic practice, you know, that's what's called asceticism, any ascetic practice, where you restrain yourself from doing what you normally do. Right? You can make that extreme. The point is, generally, fasting, detoxing, withdrawing, Lent is based on that. You know, it's the same thing. You know, so you're choosing not to partake in a conditioned habit. But food is one of the biggest ones, right? Yeah, it's hard to break.
But
Eating.
then if you look at what's happening on a physical level, when you reach that phase of autophagy, where your cells are eating the bad cells, it's like a reflection of what's happening spiritually as well, but it's happening on a physical level.
Yeah.
You're cleansing.
Right.
You're getting rid of karma.
You do. You know, look, fasting, like I said before in other talks, almost everything we have, practices, things, are based on what we're trying to mimic. These ancient memories of these masters and sages and wise people who got there with their means. So when you awaken enough kundalini, okay, when you've healed, which means you've healed enough, cleared enough, all those things, when you've done that, you eat less. Your body doesn't require physical sustenance because it's now getting the prana and chi directly. The Taoists talk about it through the skin, other systems talk about it through the chakras, through the acupuncture points, but the idea is you are directly drawing prana into you, is the idea. And if Kundalini truly activates, that doesn't even need to happen because you are directly connected to the source of all energy. Right? So think about looking at someone who's doing that. You're like, man, they're not eating. Okay, I'm going to not eat too. That's how it kind of starts. So I'm going to fast. Well, the problem is you're not ready. You do it for like 3 days, then you're done. Right? Or you do it for 2 hours, like, no, I'm going crazy. But that's what ends up happening. So to answer your question, that's where it's going there. That yes, you're right. But the problem is we're trying to reverse engineer all these spiritual practices from these natural states these highly evolved humans got to, or were at in previous ages possibly, that we're trying to now get back to, is the thing of it. And food is the big one. That's the big one, you know, because I remember reading, there's a series of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Bayard Spalding. Anyone know that? Or you do, I told you. But it's been around since like early 1900s. Okay, it's like one of those books like Autobiography of a Yogi. It's like got fantastical stories in it, but it's a story about these scientists from the West who befriend and start doing experiments with these ascended masters in the East. Is the whole story, okay? So in there, they talk about they're having dialogue and like conversations like, so how are you doing this? How do you fly? How do you teleport? And these masters are going, okay, well, here's how we're doing it. Okay. Well, when you stop eating, what happens is your organs take on a different function. They actually shift into a different gear that most humans don't have access to. And the intestines, now that they don't need food, they can hold air. Kind of like birds.
Wow.
That allows you to fly. And so this is how we fly. But I remember reading that, so I'm like, whoa, what if this is true? And, you know, the Taoists, for example, really got into this, right? That's kind of what they specialized in. They would talk about stuff like that. The organs actually taking on different versions of themselves, functioning in different ways that, you know, modern medicine and science wouldn't even conceive of. It's interesting to think about, right? So if you know, the healthier you get, the less you actually start eating because you can extract your calories more efficiently from better quality food. So many people start experiencing that. You just start eating better. Now, you've got to get through emotional eating, you've got to get through habitual eating, all those phases too, for a lot of people are a problem. But the point is, if you can get to the phase where you kind of move through all of that, eventually, you will naturally start to eat less and eat better, is the thing. And your body will extract energy more efficiently because everything becomes more efficient, is what happens. And the microbiome completely changes too, probably dramatic, spectacular ways, you know, which then allows you to even eat less, and in turn, especially if you're doing other stuff too, other practices and things, it makes your body more vital, vibrant, all these things.
So food being the ultimate path, but any act that essentially causes discomfort and you have to overcome is helping to grow that self,
Right.
that
Right.
discipline of the mind.
Exactly. And so all of us have to start with our addictions and our phobias, the two ends of the extreme, right? We all have those.
Would you say those are the karmas that we look at first?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to start there.
Addictions
It's
and.
basic healing,
Okay.
right? Basic psychology, basic healing, right? You got to start with your addictions, your physical, your mental, your emotional addictions. You got to start with your fears. Fears, of course, your traumas fall into the fears, right? All the traumas you're holding, you haven't fully healed yet, are based on fear. So it's the same, a supreme aversion is from fear, right? And trauma. Supreme craving is addiction. So that's kind of why those two are the beginning and end to what you have to practice and work on. Questions? So we're at 3 o'clock, so I'll be here for a little bit longer if you have any questions or other things. And what topics are interesting
All of them.
down the road?
Everything all at once.
I would say I'd like to learn more about the different like dimensions, either up or down.
Yeah,
where
that's
it's
a
like
cool.
people that have actually
Yeah.
like mapped out those realms.
Yeah, there are
That's
maps.
cool.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my big emphasis is meditation. Obviously, meditation, mindfulness. And I'm going to have trainings for those, okay? For kind of every level along the way, whether you're a beginner or can meditate but need to meditate better, or got a good practice and want to really deepen and advance your meditation. So all of that is kind of what I emphasize myself, but that's going to be available too, just so you know.
Will that be in addition to these meetings, or?
Yeah. These are just kind of gatherings for me to share and to discuss and meet others. But like I mentioned before, I'm going to be sending, for those of you who've given me your emails, an invite to my community hub, which will have those in there that you can then sign up for, know about, stuff like that.
Something you could read to, you asked about how your meditation's going, but I don't really know what a good meditation is, or
Yeah.
what, I mean, I'm sure there's many levels. I think you were
Right.
way ahead of me, for sure. But just to even gauge ourselves as to, are we really just a beginner, or is there something that you could read that has that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of exactly what I'm talking about. It's really important to know that, right? There is a book called The Mind Illuminated, and it's a Buddhist-based book, but the Buddhist master of meditation. So I recommend that. But The Mind Illuminated it's based on a text from like about 1,000 years ago that talks about 10 stages of meditation and what you experience, because when you meditate properly, like we're talking about, there are stages and there are specific things you experience physically, mentally, emotionally, which are kind of like guideposts and like checkoffs. Oh, that's happening. Oh, that means I'm probably there, and that's what's probably happening. And this is kind of where I'm at, and this is kind of what I have to focus on, and this is what may be difficult, so I should kind of focus on that. It's kind of what it becomes. So it becomes like a map. Now, you can get that book and start kind of wading through it. You may not get too far, because it can get pretty heady, but the meditation I teach is based on that book. It's based on what that book is based on as well, right? And it's the meditation the Buddha taught called Anapanasati. And it's mindfulness of breathing is what it translates into. So that's kind of what my go-to meditation is to practice. And because doing that is what helps you practice mindfulness. That's what you need, first and foremost, to really work on the stuff we're talking about. You know, the craving, aversion, stress, which is what that is, right? Stress is craving and aversion, how we're handling it. So how you handle stress gets directly affected by your level of mindfulness, which is how neutral you can be to something, whatever you're feeling, whatever thought you're having. So you can practice that. Practicing that is what mindfulness is. And you do it in a meditative state, so you can focus on that, and that's what that is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I got it, I wrote it down.
Yeah, that book's taken me a while to get through, but it's great.
Yeah.
Which book is it?
It's called The Mind Illuminated.
Mind Illuminated.
The Mind Illuminated.
Can you repeat the name of that book by Spalding?
Oh, that's The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. It's like 5 short volumes, and the author is Spalding. It's one of those books where people have tried to prove it and disprove it. They can't either way. Anything in it.
I do have a topic I'm interested in at some point. I know it's probably deep, but it's like understanding, because I know the Buddhists, it's like they're trying to just skip to the end, right? Get all the work done, get to the end, get back to the source, the light, the infinite happiness. And part of me is like, if this is like a game of learning in a sense, like, do you want to just skip to the end, or do you want to play the game through the necessary levels to make it there to fully encapsulate the experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you know that's kind of why I try to integrate these different threads, right? Because the Buddha's stick was, if you're tired of this, here's your way out. Basically, that's what his thing was. If you're tired of going through this whole cycle again and again, here's how you can get out, here and now. So yeah, now, over time, as Buddhism spread, and intermingling with native, indigenous Hindu traditions and Taoist traditions in China, it got a little less away from that, or more into kind of what you're talking about, how to live healthier, happier.
Because I mean, the thought is like, I mean, I had the strong idea that in the beginning there was infinite love and light, and God got bored and decided to just create everything to find its way back to itself, to appreciate itself. So it's like, if I just skip to the end, am I defeating the purpose of why I split myself up originally?
Well, what also helps to understand is, now, what I said, I said from like a general understanding point of view, but the thing is, with the Buddha's teachings, he gave you the final answer. But to get to the final answer, what it takes, if you do that, get you to the other place too.
Mm-hmm.
the healthy, happy place,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like the Buddhist path makes everything very clear and how to, but you don't have to worry about getting there and being done with it,
Mm-hmm.
because you won't.
I was gonna say, could
For a
you even,
long time.
could you even
won't.
if you wanted to, like,
Yeah.
you do when you're ready, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And usually if you think you're there, you're probably imagining it, is the thing.
So it's like having the tools and repertoire
So,
for the infinite.
The Buddha gave you the full map,
Mhm.
is the beauty of it. So the thing is, don't get too caught up in just focusing on the end. Know the end, understand it,
But the journey.
but you're going to be on the journey no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And the benefits of mindfulness that you can incorporate along the journey is what will give you the happiness. That's the key. Because what is happiness? It's you want to not be stressed. You want to feel this state of contentment, peace, joy that does not pass.
Acceptance.
Right? How do you get there? Well, acceptance, yeah. But how do you get to acceptance? Well, you have to learn how to accept yourself. What parts of yourself? What are your thoughts, your sensations? Back to mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was watching a documentary yesterday on Ramana Maharshi, and they were saying, like, if you're in the presence of somebody like that, he can give immense amounts of grace. But they said they were very good about knowing exactly how much to give to each person, because
Yeah.
you could like drive somebody insane, or you could actually kill somebody if you gave it all at once.
Yeah.
And so like
exactly.
they knew who to give a little bit to or a lot to, and I guess it's just like when you're ready.
Right. Right. And just imagine having that level of knowing.
Yeah. Just looking at somebody
Yeah.
and knowing like, oh, they need like 15%.
Yeah.
I know, it's just mind blowing that humans are capable of that.
You know how there's all these, everything we talk about is layers and layers and layers. In the Buddhist faith, is there, first, is there an end? And secondly, is there somebody who's adding more layers? Is it like, in sports, there's a record, and then somebody breaks the record, and somebody breaks that record? Or is it that somebody's actually mapped this thing out past where anybody would ever go? Maybe it's a stupid question, but probably is.
Maybe to help you answer the question, in the Buddhist and Hindu cosmology, and this kind of gets into the layers of the cosmos, but their idea is creation, the universe is cyclical. There's no beginning or end. It's continuously cyclical. So the present universe is born from the remains of the last universe. You follow?
Mhm.
So they talk about it in that terms. It's cyclical, okay? And so the universe, we talk about multi-universes too, but this universe is playing out according to the same laws that the previous universe did. The same tiers, same stratification, the same laws, all those things, right?
Mhm.
So in that sense, things aren't changing. Things are playing out to, the laws of physics, laws of supernatural physics, the laws of all the laws that we know and don't know, right? And the idea is the mind of a sentient being, a human, say on Earth, right, is capable of knowing that. Is the idea. Because the idea is consciousness, universal consciousness, is localizing. All of creation is simply localizations of universal consciousness in this idea. Does that make sense? So every particle, every being are just localizations of the one thing. So kind of like a fractal or hologram works, every localization has access to all of it.
As above, so below.
As above, so below.
Fractaling.
So therefore, every localization has the ability to access all of it, if they know how. Because the problem is the localizations, though, create partitions and layers that start to remove you from all of it. The body, our senses.
The senses, yeah.
Right. So, but the idea still is that it is still possible to transcend the body and senses and access all of it. That's kind of what I was referring to when you can, in very advanced meditative states, do that. Right? And so when you do that, then they come back and describe to us what they learned, the maps that we've been talking about, right? And so then they describe, okay, yes, look, here's how it is. If you do this, you can experience that too. So in essence, yeah, they're not creating new maps. But the idea is these are universal maps that have been there from the beginning. That will be there after the Earth is gone. And the next Earth comes. Again, again, again. You know, it just, your brain just melts eventually. There's a fascinating story in, you know, there's a whole section of literature in the Indian stories that in Hinduism called the Puranas. Okay? It's classified as stories, myths and stories. And there's a story of a sub-story about a main story, the main story being the Ramayana. It's a story about a prince and his drama, being banished, and it's a massive story, epic story. Many of you may know famous characters, Ram and Sita and Hanuman. But in that story, there's a smaller story where one of the characters, Hanuman, is tasked with finding a ring that was given to him by the prince to give to someone else, the princess. He loses the ring. Okay, it falls into some crevice. It goes into some underworld or something. So this character Hanuman has to go find it. So he goes on the journey to find it. He ends up to where the ring is, in a deep underworld lair, where these massive snake-like beings live. Nagas. So Hanuman is like, okay, I'm looking for the ring. The Naga ruler goes, oh, I've got it. Plus 1,000 more of the same rings. Hanuman's like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, well, where you're at is kind of outside of the earth realm. So this ring that you've lost has happened again and again and again through 1,000 cycles and has ended up here. And not every Hanuman like you is able to find it. And the ones that find it, I tell them the same thing, that I've accumulated all these rings from different versions of you.
And this isn't...
This is a story that, you know, that they're talking about as like, okay.
Is this like what you would equate with timelines? Not necessarily losing them in each lifetime. That's not what this is. This is like
Whole
different-
cycles of universal creation. Where this Naga king is saying, look, most of the events in your timeline happens almost in every timeline. Which is very interesting to think about. But there's subtle differences based on different choices people make. So there have been innumerable stories that you're part of where the same events have happened, where you lose the ring again and again, different versions of you in different timelines, in different cycles of creation.
Just depending on one little choice that you make. And then there's a whole bunch of different... Is it like...
No, this is completely different, like, universes.
Okay.
So like a creation of one universe, and then that universe
Again
destroys,
comes, same
and then
story
another,
happens.
Another universe is
The
created.
same story happens.
Same story happens.
The ring is lost again, and again, and again, and again, through like 1,000 universes.
I've seen this like play out. It's like everything is like a representation of the story. We all play a certain role as the story unfolds, but
Yeah.
everything
So
is
it's like
a
Groundhog Day,
continuation of the story.
literally.
Yeah.
In a universal sense, it's a Groundhog Day.
This is beyond reincarnation of one soul.
Oh yeah.
This, okay. This is like reincarnation of...
It's kind of like a universal reincarnation. The universe reincarnated
Okay.
is the idea.
Infinites inside of infinites.
And so then this character Hanuman, okay, I'll take this ring, and then goes back up.
Like this will do.
Like what?
It is the ring.
And they're all the same ring. I'll
Yeah,
just take
they're all the
that
same
one.
ring.
Yeah.
That one looks good. I'll take that one.
I mean,
Doesn't matter. It fills the role.
And for it to like even make sense, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, okay,
When he
yeah,
grabbed
sounds
it, it
good.
became his ring.
and there are stories of, you know, same class of literature where a sage travels from a different universe to our universe and meets the king. And the king is like, where'd you come from? I came from the other universe, but I came here to, whatever reason, to give you a message or ask something of you. Oh, okay, the king says. Like it's matter of fact, and
I
Yeah.
think that's just like the representation of as we go through the different yugas and cycles, it's like we get closer to the spirit and closer to these other areas. I feel like the Kali yugas are farthest from spirit.
Yeah.
And as we get
That's the
closer
idea.
to spirit, all the barriers start to dissolve.
Right.
At
And
least our
different things are
perception.
possible,
Yeah.
you know? Even on Earth that we can't even conceive of. In different ages is the idea. You know, they say like in the Satya Yoga, the golden age. Maybe I'll ever talk about the ages, you know, but like the golden age in the Vedic tradition, right? They say specifically, oh yeah, humans in that age live to 100,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're about 30 feet tall, live to 100,000 years. The second age, they live to 1,000 years. Or 10,000 years. The third age, they live to 1,000 years. And our age, they live to 100 years. And again, next golden age, humans will be able to live to 100,000 years again.
So it's like some people think maybe we're going into the Sattva Yuga, right? Like there may have been a transition or maybe there
Some
wasn't.
shift is happening,
Yeah.
you know, it's, again, way more complicated than what we're talking about, because
Yeah.
there's like descending and ascending cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and many ages within ages within ages.
Mm-hmm.
Again, your brain melts.
I know, it's just, you find one thing and it's just 30 other things sprout off. But I can't stop learning, it's so interesting.
It's
It
really
is interesting.
exciting.
Yeah.
It's
So then
like-
when you look at some of the statues in Giza and in Sumer, and you see these giants, you're like, huh,
Yeah.
is this just imagination, or were they actually depicting beings that were that big? When Gilgamesh is holding a lion under his armpit, right? Famous Gilgamesh statue, statue in Sumer, he's holding a lion under his armpit with a mane. Was he that big?
Yeah, and the Native Americans talked about the mound builders being giants.
Yeah.
I looked something up, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it was talking about how Kali Yuga gets so low that the average lifespan is 12, and then the people are like 3 feet.
Oh, so it goes like down, and it's like.
At the darkest of the
Kali
Kali Yuga, yeah. I mean,
down.
Yeah.
at the darkest level, yeah.
Well, 12 years, I mean, as bad as it is, you only have 12 years, I guess.
Right.
Like, you don't have to live 100 years with.
And you know, the people who kind of like tried to map these out have said that
Well, yeah.
like we are in an ascending phase. We're leaving some level of dark age.
You feel it,
You
everything
feel
kinda
it.
going kinda
Yeah,
down,
yeah, you
like,
do.
Everything's a little
Yeah.
crazy,
And
everyone
so
knows how to react.
things are gonna get
Things seem
better.
super bad.
But still a transition.
Yeah.
I don't
The
know, being
idea.
part of the up is pretty awesome though.
When you talk about stillness, which I can appreciate, is your mind actually shut off? Or is it?
That's a good deep question. That's a complicated question, and it's an easy question, but it's a
Always
complicated
ask-
answer.
I always
You
end
know,
with
and
easy
people
questions.
say still mind,
Yeah.
and it's when you start to like get into it, it's very unfortunate people say still mind, because there's stillness in your awareness, but your mind may not be still. You can still have thoughts. There is a stage of pure stillness that's I kind of reference, which is called emptiness, pure emptiness in the Buddhist world. They kind of really focus on it, shunyata, emptiness, where it's a very exalted state of everything is still, okay? But stillness, the use of stillness it's kind of a application of getting stiller. So you're gonna notice thoughts and sensations, but stillness means you have better ability to be aware of all of it without moving away from your center point, is what it means.
So non-reactive is a better term.
Being non-reactive, but being able to be aware of, so you can be in a still place, but your mind may still be active.
But when I do that and I feel like a thought comes in my head, if it's coming from my mind, I basically push it away. If it enters my thought without it coming from my mind, somehow I'm feeling like I could tell the difference. I don't know if I can or not, but if it didn't originate from my mind, then that's now, it's a pure entry point. It's
Mhm.
basically something more divine.
Yeah, yeah,
And
there can be differences.
That's the only thing
Right.
I try to let in.
Yeah,
And I know that I'm not really meditating properly if thoughts are still coming from my mind. I mean,
well,
it's,
again, that's kind of a misunderstanding. It's like thoughts will come into your mind for a long long time.
But you
In
have to
meditation.
watch it, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the problem.
Like I said, the pure no thought stage happens at a very advanced stage of meditation. You see, that is a thing, but it's a little too hyper focused on when people read about it and think about it. But it's a thing, it's a powerful stage of consciousness. Things happen. Amazing, it's like doorways to things. But my point is, way before that though, we're still cultivating stillness along the way, because stillness along the way means something different, practically, in our conversation, than the end goal. You see what I mean? It's really two different definitions, but we use the same word. So for our sake, stillness is the ability to simply be aware without reacting.
Be aware that that's a thought from my
That's a
mind.
thought.
That's a
I see where it's coming from. Okay,
Just let it go.
Yeah,
Yes.
no energy.
right.
Watching it go
That's the
over.
practical application of stillness. That's important. You
Yeah,
see, and that can grow. That can grow. Like I said, it means you're still gonna have thoughts, but you can be in a very still, focused state where your center point isn't moving, but you're aware of still a continuous bombardment of thoughts or sensations or whatever. Still gonna be there. Eventually, the body and the mind will quiet down. That's that end stage. That will happen naturally.
Well, this is always when it always happens in the middle of the night, is when I'm trying to sift these things out. So I've already been asleep and now I wake up, so I'm in a semi-conscious state
Mhm.
already, which I feel gets me closer to where I wanna be.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's either gonna be something, as I said, if it's a thought, which lately it's not a thought anymore, cause that part's already gone, and it's like, if it's coming from the Holy Spirit, is more, then I feel like, okay, that's something that I need to do
Right.
versus something I need to pass on. Is it my ego in my mind, which I need to pass on, or is it coming?
And that's a whole different conversation. That's a whole different, like, how to deal with your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But stillness is in terms of kind of what I talked
Well,
about.
but one leads to the other.